Hey guys, welcome back to the West York Entrepreneur Podcast. Thank you for your patience. I took a 1 year off, 1 year and 1 month to be exact, a little hiatus as I became a dad. I had my first child, my daughter, Briggs, and I just wanted to focus on being a good dad, a good husband, and take the summer off, if I'm being frank. We're almost at 200 episodes here, and it was time to take a little break after doing it for 4 years. So thank you for your patience. Maybe you didn't know all that because this is your first podcast episode you ever listened to. Maybe you're a faithful follower from the past 4 years. I'm not sure. But either way, I'm super glad you're here. And I'm excited to dive in with some local entrepreneurs to share their stories, their thoughts on entrepreneurship, the nitty-gritty, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything that is in between. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, Matt, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. So I am excited to have you. So Matt Duve is the owner and the founder of 716 Pool Service. Him and I met a couple years ago, and I knew now was the right time to reach out to you to have you on the podcast, man. So if you don't mind, right off the bat, I know who you are, right? We know each other, but our audience might not know who you are. So Matt, how did you get into the pool, like cleaning business? How did you get into it? Like, I doubt people will, most people don't put that on their drawings in kindergarten. So why don't you just tell us your story about how you got into it?
Sure, David. So, um, I started in the pool cleaning business, actually working for my dad all through high school and college. I ran his service for a couple of years, and then after high school, I went to the University of Buffalo for accounting and um, have my master's in accounting, and that's what I, thought that I wanted to do, and that's what everybody told me to do, and I ended up working in New York City for a little while for a big four accounting firm, and then came back home, and I worked for like a mid-sized firm downtown, and long story short, it wasn't for me, and so
Were you completely out of the pool business at all, like during that time? I have to imagine, right? Because you had a full
I
time.
worked over the summer here and there, just helping out, but I was pretty busy with, between school and working. And I started working as a staff accountant like during COVID. And so it wasn't like a very opportune time to like start a business in the first place. And yeah, I, I couldn't stand being an accountant anymore. It's a very toxic industry to be in. I mean, even though um, everyone says like being an accountant is a super safe job choice, and um, in the business world, it's a it's a specialty. Like you go and you specialize in accounting, and it's looked on very highly, but they don't tell you that there's super high turnover for staff, and that's what happened with me. And
So you
so
eventually were part of that turnover staff.
yeah,
What made you think that, like, all right, like I'm going to start my own pool, or did you like quit and then you're like, I'll figure it out, and then you started to do it? Because sometimes people have a plan, sometimes people have no plan. They just want to like, I need this to get out of here, and then I'll figure it out later.
I did have a little bit of a plan. So um, I think in January I bought a truck, and then I filed all the paperwork for the business still while I was working at my firm. Kind of had a plan together, and then in March officially I left the firm, and then started taking on new clients, and from there the rest is history.
Yeah. So you knew you were going to get right into the pool cleaning business, obviously, right?
Yeah, it was surprisingly a pretty smooth transition, but just like growing the business organically, and like um, you know just getting those first couple clients and getting like my foot in the door into like the industry, and starting to get a little bit of market share. That took a little bit of time. I think at the end of my first season, I finished with like 20 weekly clients, which
Mm-hmm.
is not much,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a great start.
Yeah, it was a great start for sure, man. It's not like you had like a family of four you had to feed, right, and or anything like that, right? You're a young guy.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was able to do it is to take the risk, and um, no mortgage, no kids, still lived at home,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was like, if I don't do this now, I might not ever do it, and I might never get out of accounting. I might be trapped there, and then 20 years goes by, I have a mortgage, kids, and then I'm stuck
Yeah.
and just miserable. So I didn't want to go through with that, and despite like what other people said, they said, say an accountant, you can always, instead of public, you can work in private industry, and it wasn't for me. So I ended up leaving, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, man. So I have to imagine the biggest rebuttal people gave you, whether an entrepreneur or not, is like, well, you can't do a pool company in Buffalo. It's like you only use your pool 3 months out of the year, right? Because you're thinking like you basically make. I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I probably am. 75% of your income has to come from those 3-4 months that you know obviously that people can use their pool. So did you get that right off the bat? I have to imagine, or maybe you just knew from being in the business like, hey, this is very sustainable. Obviously, it is because we're here today. That's why you're on it. But
Yeah.
tell me about that.
So it was a risk, and everyone, for the first few years, they kept asking me like, "What are you going to do in the wintertime?" Because you do get some time off, and as a business grows, you get busier and busier, and your bookends become smaller and smaller. So right now, I get about 8 weeks off in the wintertime, but besides that, from the beginning of February all the way through like the end of December, I'm pretty slammed.
So what are you doing in February and March and like April?
Um, you know, Equipment maintenance, marketing, advertising, ordering supplies, ordering new equipment. Pretty much just gearing up to hit the ground running because April and May are like the craziest, months of
Oh
the
yeah.
year for us. I mean,
And here
it's
he is
nonstop.
recording a podcast. I don't know what date it is, like June 12th or 11th, whatever it is. I can't believe even got you on here. I feel pretty special all of a sudden. But go ahead.
Well, as like the month of May ends, all of our accounts are dialed in, and I can I have my employees service them, and so I I'm able to delegate a lot more, especially like compared to the first few years when I didn't have any employees. I couldn't really delegate at all, so I had to like I was slammed all the time. But now my schedule is a little bit more flexible. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are not super crazy for me anymore. I do a lot of service work still, but for the most part, I have my employees handle a lot of like the cleaning, the service, and you
So you're
know,
working on the business versus in it.
yeah, that's kind of where I've started transition from like the first few years. Now I work on the business more than in it.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions, but I'm not sure which one I want to ask first. So as a seasonal business owner, right? Like, like what advice do you have for businesses that are seasonal or getting into seasonal or things of that nature? Because like I imagine a lot of times is how do I get employees that only can work 6 months? Because like I imagine you can't keep them busy all year round. Maybe I'm wrong. So tell us a little bit about that.
So for seasonal businesses, if you're just starting out, I think like college kids are a great resource to use because a lot of the times they have off in the summer, and so you can kind of um, you know get a couple good college kids as employees, and they're usually younger guys in good shape, and they can help you out all summer long, and then they go back to school like late in the fall. Um, and they usually finish up early in the spring, so that's pretty perfect. That's what I've done, and then like to retain employees, obviously, as the business grows, you want to keep on your best employees. So it's tough to kind of find, they're like a diamond in the rough. So fortunately, I was able to find someone that's a little bit older. They go to Florida in the wintertime, and then they come home
Oh,
back to
perfect. Yeah.
Buffalo.
So that's actually a good point there. So I thought it would be college students too, right? But
Yeah.
you're thinking you get some snowbirds out there, right? They come back, they're looking for something to do,
Keep them busy.
keep them busy, give them something to do. They use their mind a little bit. That's really cool. So obviously you've grown a lot since you started, Matt.
Yeah.
And so looking back now from where you are, if you were looking at Matt when he just got his first truck, what would you tell him? Like, hey, man, don't do this, or don't even bother. Like, here, like, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say I have two big pieces of advice is be patient. Um, you don't have to take on all the work. You don't have to say yes to everything. And the other piece goes along with that is there's a lot of power in being able to say no and like turning away, maybe clients that aren't a good fit for you or like jobs that aren't a good fit for you. At the end of the day, like it's your business. You have to run it. You can't let it run you. And I mean, I I say no to a lot of work now, and I pretty much just take care of my weekly clients, and that's my bread and butter, and that's what I think has led to a lot of success for me.
And another question, thing we talked about before we hit record was like niching down, and I think that is so smart because we talk about questions that we want to talk about and whatnot. We just don't hit record without going over at least a little bit of outline here, and I gotta imagine that people ask you all the time, well, can you do this? Like, I gotta imagine one question you get is, do you install pools? Do you repair pools? Will you fix this liner?
Yep.
And I gotta imagine in the beginning, you're like, I could do anything, right? Like, I mean, I'll do anything because you want to stay afloat. So, what have you said to that to then to now? And what is your niche and why did you niche if you did? So I'll stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my niche is weekly service and maintenance, and we're pretty much a fiduciary for the client. We try to protect their investment and their property, and so we will open the pool in the spring and then clean it all summer long and then close it in the fall. And we pretty much just look after the pool. And if it needs, if work needs to be done on it, we try to make the best recommendation for the client. Um, and that's our niche. And a lot of times I'll get calls for liner replacements or tile work or replasters or my heater's broke, can you come fix it? Some of the bigger jobs now, once you've networked yourself a little bit more, I subcontract out a few larger pool companies to do my liner replacements, to do my replasters and my big equipment pad installs. And so once you get a little bit more established, you can kind of leverage subcontractors to do the bigger jobs that you won't really take on, and then you can still earn a little bit of revenue off of those, still while like staying in your niche. And then for the smaller service and repair work, I usually just I'll just refer other local companies and just let them handle the business. I still always reply and try to have great customer service, even if I'm going to say no. I'll just try to send them in the right direction and point them to, another local company that can probably serve their needs.
Yeah, so no thoughts ever expanding because you're sitting here going like, you ever just sit there and just do the. I mean, I'll speak for me. Sometimes I daydream and go like, oh well, I could like. I'll give you a really silly example. My brother and I, we own a couple Airbnbs, and we literally pay our cleaners a substantial amount each year. Okay, like it's more than what my wife makes. Okay, and I sit here and go, maybe I should just start a cleaning company for short-term rentals. But then it involves all this work, right? But it's crossed my mind. You daydream about it, you think about it. When you're laying on the couch, like, have you ever thought about like, well, maybe I should branch off into this because with the pool, maybe hot tub cleaning, maybe there's just so many different avenues you can take, or do you like always sit there and say, I'm just going to stay in this niche, you can't move me out of it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I stay in my niche because I know that's what I'm good at and that's what I specialize in. And if you try to take on too much work or too many different things, then you might not have the employees or the support or the staff to be able to, the capacity to take on the work. And B, it's going to distract you from what you're really good at. So, weekly cleanings and weekly service is our bread and butter, and that's what we stick with.
Yeah. So was that the only thing you would consider yourself an expert in? It's okay because I hate being like jack of all trades, master of none. So so would you consider that? Because one of the questions you wrote down is, what would you consider yourself an expert in?
Yes, I would consider myself an expert in that. Yeah, totally. But there's so much more to owning and running the business than just the service point of it. I mean, yeah, you have to be able to provide a great service and a lot of value to your clients, but you also have to, network and run the business. I do all the admin work and all the stuff on the back end that no one sees. Staying on top of deadlines, due dates, scheduling, bringing on new accounts, managing employees. So I would say that I'm an expert in not only like the weekly service and maintenance part of it, but also, trying to become an expert at running the business.
Well, you have an accounting background, so it makes sense that you do the back end, right? It's so funny because most of us, at least I found out from doing over 100 episodes, is most of us don't have that accountant brain. We just don't have that operator. We're just more like big vision. Let me go for it. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I feel like you're more strategic than most because of the way you're wired. Because I'm not wired to be an accountant. Like I just can't do that. So that being said, man, what do you think is like next for you? Do you plan on just to keep growing each year? Do you a lot of us get bored and we start doing other things? Like what's new for you, or what's next?
I think I'm going to keep on scaling and just like expanding the business. But what I would really like to do is I have a couple friends that live in Dallas, and I would maybe like to open up a branch down there and go there in the wintertime and run that, and then come up here in the summer and run the business in Dallas remotely, and kind of have, two different streams of income coming in. And um, in Dallas, there's no open and close. It's just cleanings year round, and so it would just be consistent monthly revenue. And um, you know, through like leveraging software, they've made it pretty easy to do that. Like there's this software called Skimmer, and it makes it so easy to run the back end and like assigning work orders and assigning work to employees, and route optimization, scheduling, and that's been a very powerful tool that I've had to learn this year, and it's helped a lot, and it's going to make opening up a second location out of the state possible.
Hmm. And obviously, you got to hire people out there, right? So you've been doing a little bit of flipping back and forth. But so obviously, we kind of go back to our first question is like, how do you find seasonal employees, right? And you said a lot of them are younger, right? And we actually have one of his employees in the room right now, so which is cool. So I actually almost wanted to say to you, I apologize. What's your name again? Ivan. And you didn't think you were going to be on the podcast, did you? So you guys can't see Ivan. Maybe he's not real. Maybe we're talking to someone that's not Ivan. But my point is that how a lot of people have a trouble working with people that are younger, right? Because there's, they don't want to work, or there's all these, not so positive things sometimes. And obviously, you're very young, right? To me, I feel like I'm out of touch with reality of like, what is it, Gen Z these days or whatever it's called. So any advice for those? Because obviously you're young. You work with, obviously, I call them kids because, they're like half my age. That's why I don't mean anything to be disrespectful. But any advice for those that work with people that are younger? Like, what have you noticed works, doesn't work? How do you find them? How do you interview them? Maybe I got to imagine the questions might be a little different than they were 20 years ago, right? When I was being interviewed.
Yeah.
Like, any thoughts there?
I think, I mean, it applies to both young employees and older employees. Is just creating a company culture and setting standards. And um, with for my company, it's setting the standard of just extreme professionalism, and I brought that in from my accounting background. So like the stereotypical pool guy, he shows up, no uniform, in some old van. You don't really know if you can trust him. You have, $1 million property with a huge swimming pool, and you want to be able to trust, whoever's cleaning and taking care of it, that
Who's just on your property in general.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
And so by setting standards of like professionalism and being trustworthy, it kind of helps weed out those employees that you might not be able to trust, or any kind of bad eggs. And I guess that's been like that's helped me find like good employees and keep them year over year.
Just by talking about the standards in general in the interviews? So
Yeah.
I'm hearing. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So is there any like, actually, see, a lot of times when I hire people, I just put a post on Facebook. Who do you know someone that's really good at this, right? So how do you find even, like I said, younger kids these days? Do you put something on Indeed? How does that work?
Word of mouth. So Ivan's actually one of my clients' kids. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah, and then just word of mouth, really, friends and family. That seems to work the best. Or you could always post on Indeed. A lot of times high schools have some kind of business academy, and you can always pick up maybe like a summer intern. But to find college kids, I would say Facebook or Indeed. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think, not to throw Ivan or anybody under the bus here, but what do you think is the biggest thing that you need to deal with when you're working with a younger generation for this? Is it like just they're on their phones, or is it they're blaring their, because I don't know about you, I like to listen to a lot of loud music. When I was younger, they're pulling up to the driveway. Like, is there a certain thing that sticks out to you? It's okay if the answer is no. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you're like, hey, just so you know, like, I like you, we're going to bring you here, but like, for example, maybe like I slept in, so it's like, hey, you have to be on time. Like, what is the number one thing that you kind of handle up front, maybe?
It's setting those standards. I mean, it's the company culture. Just saying like, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is what's expected of you. And I mean, Ivan is a great example of that. There's no horseplay, in the backyards. If I'm sending, two guys out to, on their pool route, there's no, profanity or, foul language, no horseplay on, at the client's account.
Mm-hmm.
It's The phones aren't really a big issue because I just say leave your phone in the car because if you fall in the pool, it's not my fault if it gets wet.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
No, I love it, man. Is there anything else that you hope that we talk about today at all? Because obviously this is your podcast. I do these, do these all month here, but I want to make sure I'm giving you the floor of something that maybe you want to talk about at all, or do you want me just to go with another question? Because I have a list of questions here.
You can shoot another question.
Okay, because sometimes people are like, I really want to talk about this, right? So what are some key metrics that you track? You're an accountant, right? So I know you're a numbers guy. Is there some key metrics that you found out that are really helpful as a business owner that maybe you didn't think about before? Like people talking about KPIs, right? Things like that. Sometimes when you're in advertising, what's the cost of acquisition per client? So anything that are key metrics that you kind of notice that you like tracking for your business.
In terms of key metrics, I tend to just look at, the P&L. I mean, start with that and then just make sure that you're profitable. Um, you know, when I was coming up with the business, I'm obviously almost every single day when I was an accountant working downtown, I would think, okay, what kind of business can I start? And, should I make a product? Should I, offer a service? And, what's great about service businesses is that, you know, relatively low expenses.
Yep.
You know,
Versus
not
creating
a lot
this
of,
product. Yeah.
not a lot of overhead. You don't have to have a lot of inventory. Pretty much just getting paid for your time in exchange for the service. And so, in my opinion, like service businesses are where it's at. I mean, it's helped me be pretty profitable. I'm not making like a thin margin selling a product. And so that's what I have gone off of.
I love it, man. I love it. And so actually that was one of the questions I wrote down was like, so service versus product, right? Have you seen other businesses with products and you just sat there and said, I'm going to stay away from that? Or maybe you just went into the service because that was just something you're good at, or because it was a lower barrier of entry?
I think both. Like it was a lower barrier of entry because I knew there was a huge demand in the market. There's not a lot of pool service companies out there. There's maybe a dozen or so, and then some of them are also installers. So I compete with, installers and some of the other just standalone service businesses. So I try to stand out by just being professional and just doing our best and trying to provide the best product and service for our clients.
That's good, man. You're sticking to what's good for you. So now, when it comes to like you said networking before, you mentioned it a couple of times here, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you do with networking these days? Because obviously in the summer, I gotta imagine you're just hoping to, have time to to eat lunch, right? Like you're just sitting here going, oh my God. Because sometimes like when I'm busy, I'm like, did I even eat today? Right? What happened? Mm-hmm. So what do you do for networking these days? What do you find is doesn't work? Does networking look different for you than maybe it would have did a couple years ago? Things like that.
Well, the beauty of the service that we offer is a lot of it's a luxury service, and so a lot of our clients are business owners or pretty prominent people in the community, and so that's been like a really great tool to like network locally. Mm-hmm. Is just through our clients, and by earning their trust, they open up their network and share their network with us, and that's helped a lot. But on the pool side of things, I try to go to as many like trade shows as I can in the off season. There's one in Orlando. There's one in Dallas, and that way you can kind of like stay on the up and up on what's going on in the industry, and you can network that way and figure out what are the best products. And I have a bunch of sponsors that we put on the back of our shirts.
So here's my question. So when you go to these, are you more excited about like seeing what's new in technology and products, or are you more excited to learn about like other people who do what you do and you can learn from them? Like what excites you more at this point?
I think the products and like staying on top of, what's the latest and greatest, because that helps us provide a better service, and, it also helps our bottom line because it increases our efficiency. Yeah. So by like staying on top of everything that's coming out, we're able to leverage that, and, it not only provides a better service, but it increases our profitability as well.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. We talked a lot today. Like we talked about standards. Like one thing I wish I brought back just to pause for a second is like to our listeners that are listening right now, like what standards are you setting? And so many times we put standards on a wall or like a vision statement, and it just collects dust, right? Like, what is our culture? What is your culture? What are your standards like? What has been slipping that you know that is something that should be revisited, or maybe just time to crack the whip sometimes? Like, you know what? Or just taking ownership. You know what? This is my fault. I've been slacking on this. We've been so busy doing A, B, and C. It's time to go back to the basics with culture. So I wanted to make sure we did not skip over that gem that I think that you brought up there. Sticking to your niche. And speaking of niches, by the way, do you stay to this one area because of drive time, or do you like really will go anywhere in Buffalo, I guess? Like, so the reason why I ask that question is sometimes people have niches, like maybe it's landscaping, they go completely separate. They're like, well, I just want to stay in Orchard Park. Like, is that something you do, or do you? Because I know you're mostly in Clarence, so tell me about that. Do you branch out or not so much?
Yeah, we started to branch out a little bit, but for the first few years, I tried to stick to just Clarence and Amherst because the thing that cuts into like our profitability is drive time, and so by keeping all of the accounts as close as possible, we maximize revenue while trying to minimize like the time of between stops. And the more cleanings that we can get in a day, the better. And it just makes it way more efficient. We're not going to be in Grand Island and then have to drive all the way back to Clarence, just to do 2 stops. And so what I've done is start in Clarence and Amherst, and then, more recently I've started to take accounts on Grand Island. I've taken a few in East Aurora. I've taken some toward Lake Ontario, and also in Lancaster, Depew area. Just kind of like expanding out. And I try to get, maybe 10 accounts in an area. That way it makes it worth it for us to go out there and service.
But it's so hard to get that first one, right? Or do you find like, I got my first one in Lancaster, I better like really hit that to make it worth it? Is that kind of like what you find yourself doing maybe? Or do you sit there and go, hey, I'm going to put you on the list here. Once we have 5, we'll service your area? Or maybe you don't have the luxury of doing that.
I've done both approaches. What I find works best is taking on the account and then, try to target like a neighborhood where you can go on Google Earth and see like, hey, there are 25 pools all next to each other or all in the same neighborhood. And then once you get that first account, maybe you have to drive out there and it's, maybe a 10-minute drive, but in the end, it's going to be worth it because I'm going to put, flyers in every single one of these people's, mailboxes
Yes.
or on their door. And, just through word of mouth, they're going to refer you to their neighbor. And, I'll end up getting 4 or 5 accounts within the first year. So it ends up working out.
Actually, it's so funny. You always you beat me to the questions here, so which is cool. So like obviously when you have like let's say you're in a nice neighborhood in a certain area, and you're like, oh, I want more in here, right? Like I'm like, all right, Kathy, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you your first cleaning for free, but I'm gonna put you on a postcard that says Kathy uses us. You should too. Like, how do you feel about that? Like that's where my brain's going. I'm sure some people are private. Some people are like, oh yeah, I don't care. I'll take a free service. Just put my first, maybe this is the address, maybe not the name. So my question to you, Matt, is this is for any service-based companies, which there's a ton of those in Buffalo, right, that do a million different things. How can you leverage those clients? Is it just obviously do good work, right? That's number one. We get that. But is there anything else like that you've done? Like, is it just throwing postcards on that street? Is it maybe like there's a perk, like, hey, if you do this, I'll do this in exchange? Like anything that kind of sticks out to you there?
We haven't really done anything like if we do this and then you do this in exchange. We haven't really done any of that, but what we have done is through like Facebook, we target all the community groups, like Clarence Community Group, Amherst has one, Akron has one, and we try to target those because we see that like the audience is pretty attentive and it picks up a lot of our posts pick up a lot of traction.
Do you use like post work you did in the neighborhood kind of in a way?
Yep.
In that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in that area, or it also helps when you do have a couple clients that are in that group, and if anyone is posting that they're looking for service, that they can say, hey, we use 716 Pool Service, we love them, we highly recommend them, and so that's a good way.
Yeah.
As well.
So we're gonna pause there because I got to do. I'm getting into this. Our first podcast episode in over a year. So usually what I'll do is when I hear something, I go, that's a good one. We should hone on that for a second. Where, okay, what group should you be in? So now watch, all your competitors are going to be in your groups doing that. But I'm just kidding. But my point is that what group should you get involved in? That is your niche that they are attentive. Like there's so many ways to do it that way. Like my brother does electrical work, and what he'll do with a client is he'll, hey, oh, thank you so much. Like, you can tell they're just really happy with what you do. Okay, cool. Do you have Facebook? 99%. My great grandma has Facebook even, and I just sit there and go, are you part of any groups? And then he'll post it on there, and then all their friends. You'll notice that a couple of people will call him from that just because of that, just because he'll ask them to post in a group. So or like next door, things like that. But yeah, man. So we're out of time.
All right.
We're moved, so we're there. So for those that want to connect with you, Matt, want to ask a question that I didn't get to, I didn't think of, or maybe they want to use your service, I don't know, or maybe they're in the Clarence area and they love to grab coffee with you because we all like connecting and whatnot. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you, man? I have people that put emails, cell phones, whatever, GPS coordinates, whatever. What's the best way to get a hold of you, Matt?
You can reach out to us via email, 716poolservice@gmail.com, or you can shoot us a text, 716-464-2912. We're also on Instagram and Facebook under 716 Pool Service. We have a couple pretty satisfying videos on Instagram and Facebook. I know everyone likes those.
Like the before and afters kind of type deal?
Yeah, the before and afters. You can check those out.
Yeah, man, we love it. I know exactly what you're saying here. So, Matt, I know, again, you're smack dab in there. Actually, you're in the middle of the heat wave right now. It's like 90 degrees for 5 days in a row. You came in, you're a man of your word, and you showed up here. So I appreciate that during your busy time of year, man.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thank you for having me.